me just make sure.
I don't know.
It'd almost be more efficient once we get all sidetracked.
I will tell you, I love those Zoom meetings.
Okay.
The Zoom meeting.
All right.
Back to the glory days now. Trenches.
All right, sir. I assume that Mike can hear us.
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Great.
You just have to make sure you talk pretty loud.
All right.
Thanks.
I don't know why I can't.
Oh, that's good.
But I'll figure that out here.
That got a lot better.
All right.
It's in stereo. It almost sounds weird.
Right.
Sir.
All right, ready? Call the order of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the City of Port Aransas, Texas, Tuesday, April 27th, 2021.
Yes. Just leave it on. That's fine.
Anything we need before we need to move on to public hearing?
Nope.
Item number 2, public hearing. Port Aransas Planning and Zoning Commission will conduct a public hearing on the following. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. Item 2.1 FPLT 21-0753, final plat of Palmia Beach PUD Unit 4A, being a replat of Lot 1, Block 11, Golf Course, Palmia Beach Unit 1B, a map of which is recorded in Volume 68, pages 195 through 200, map records in Oasis County, Texas, and lots 1, 2, and 9, Block 10, and lots 1 through 4, Block 6. Palmia Beach, a map of which is recorded in Volume 68, pages 24 through 29, map records in Oasis County, Texas. Applicant KM Beach LLC, property location 3900, Highway 361. Have any emailed or?
Nobody called in. We have no emails. Nobody has shown up.
All right. Item number 3, citizen comments and reports. This time, comments will be taken from the audience on any subject matter. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, the Planning and Zoning Commission may not discuss or take action on any item that has not been posted on the agenda.
Same answer. Nobody's called in. Nobody has emailed. And nobody has shown up to speak.
Very good. Item number 4, items for consideration. Discuss, take action, or pass on any of the following items. Item 4.1, discuss and take appropriate action on Tuesday, March 30th, 2021, Planning and Zoning regular meeting minutes.
So we have just about worked out all of the issues with our software program that automatically generates a large portion of those minutes. Some of the names, I'm not sure if you guys noticed where it said, some of it says commissioner, some of it says place 1. Those are going to change to all say commissioner. Other than that, there's going to be no changes unless you need them to submit.
And once we get all the bugs worked out, one of the nice things is that it will also immediately go to the public record, the website, so that
Right.
Nicole doesn't have to upload them in like we have in the past. So it's an integrated system, and we're just kind of working the bugs out and permissions and all of that.
And the problem is
So-
I don't have a lot of permissions to change a lot of the things on there, so I have to wait for other people to do it. So.
But you have so much extra time. Do we have a motion to approve minutes from the March 30th meeting?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Nick and a second from Craig. Ashley Robertson.
Yes. Sorry, my voice cracked.
Garrett Kipke.
Yes.
Move the mic back.
Craig Smith. Or Craig Scott. sorry.
Yes.
Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Kyle Burgess.
Yes.
Mike Dayon.
Yes.
And Chad Schmidt.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 4.2, discuss and take appropriate action on the Planning and Zoning regular meeting minutes from Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, rescheduled and held on Tuesday, March the 2nd, 2021.
And I think we're going to have the same issues with this one where some of the name placeholders are going to change, but everything else is going to be the same.
And I'm just rolling through them here. Something to talk about. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from March the 2nd, 2021?
So moved.
I'll second.
And we've got another motion from Nick and a second from Craig. I'm going to start with Mike DeYoung,
Yes.
Ashley Robertson,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
Garrett Gipke,
Yes.
Kyle Burgess,
Yes.
Nick Lorette,
Yes.
Taj Schmeider,
Yes.
motion carried.
81 pages of stuff in here. Just trying to get caught up here, so I haven't. All right.
You just burned through about 30.
That's 26 of them. Item 4.3, FPLT 21-0753. Is that? We've already read the bulk of all that, so.
Yeah, so you, no,
It's kind of small.
so you just have to read that, and I apologize for put it back all on there. So you just have to read that first sentence that ends with Palmia Beach.
Sure.
Unit 1.
Item 4.3, FPLT 21-0753, final plat of Palmia Beach PUD Unit 4A.
No, that's all he has to read. He's good.
Being a replat of Lot 1, Block 11, Golf Course, Palmia Beach, Unit 1B, a map of which is recorded in Volume 68, pages 195 through 200, map records in Oasis County, Texas, and Lots 1, 2, and 9, Block 10, and Lots 1 through 4, Block 6, Palmia Beach, map of which is recorded in Volume 68, pages 24 through 29, map records in Oasis County, Texas. Applicant KM Beach LLC, property location 3900 Highway 360.
Great, thanks.
I'll
All
make
right.
sure that gets shorter.
Yeah, so as we will start to see, probably a little faster and more furious are these larger developments that were phased and that, again, just due to the demand, has just accelerated the replat schedules for more developable, buildable lots. And this is one such replat of an already approved master plan. There was one late change that Nicole's going to bring up and put on the screen, but let me read the engineer's comment. It's in staff's opinion, not terribly significant. It was a slight change, as she'll show you in a minute, in a contour, but let me just read this from Stephen Grunwald, who I think may be on the call from Urban Engineering. It says, sorry for this late revision. We realized early last week that the northwest portion of the proposed Lot 1D, and again, it'll become real evident here when Nicole pulls it up, of the proposed Lot 1D encroached into part of the golf course that we wanted to stay in the golf course lot. We were supposed to get this revision in at that time, but it slipped through the cracks. This is simply a change on where the boundary between the proposed Lot 1D and where the remaining golf course lot is. Both areas are still designated at a T2. And I thought getting this in now was better than trying to work through a Scrivener's error later on.
Sorry.
Okay. Let me do this then real quick. Sorry, technical difficulty.
Hang on. That's okay.
Well, so let me just kind of show you what, and you have this in your package. This is what you have right here. And really what we're talking about is this sharp angle up of this boundary.
It's not in here, that's the issue.
We said this is what we have.
Oh, the existing plat is. So the existing plat, this should be in your package. So if you see this sharp angle on the existing, what changed was just instead of that sharp right angle coming up, this boundary line, simply this boundary line now follows the contour to keep it out of that golf course lot.
That's Lot 10, right?
So I think it's going to be able to put it up so you guys can see it there. So again, this is the existing boundary line here with this sharp angle up. And there you can, there's the culvert. You can see a little bit better there.
Yeah,
That's the revision that follows the contour of the golf course
It's right here.
lot. And that's the revision. And scroll on down and it should be.
That's the new revision, not what we have, right?
Correct. What you've got is what they originally submitted. What's on the screen right now is what they have revised it to, and this is what the approved.
This is what we'll be asking you to approve in lieu of the other one. And it's just, like I said, as you notice, it rounds off those to follow the golf course
It takes that right angle that was at.
Correct.
It back down.
brings it back down. And that, when you look at the aerial, Nicole and I looked at it, it follows the golf course lot and keeps that lot out of this replat piece.
And when you say the golf course lot, you mean the actual old golf course?
Yes.
The actual green.
The actual,
golf
yeah, the
course.
green.
Giving
That
back
hole.
to the golf course.
Just leaving it out of it. So anyway, that's the only revision. There were no issues between our reviewing engineer. And it's, like I said, it's in conformance with our plating ordinance. So it's an easy recommend to approve.
So everything encompassed here was just this little section right here. There was no, the lots on the map I'm looking at, those were previously, nothing changed to those previous.
From the original master plan, no.
Say that again. What are you asking?
Well,
These lots that are now being-
You have all the lots down here. Nothing's changing with those. Those probably have houses on
Those-
them.
Those aren't changing with this new revision.
Okay.
The only thing that this new revision is changing is just that outline that we just showed you.
What is the dotted lines for lots 1 through 7, the red lines?
So, okay, yeah, so this is existing and this is the revision. I mean, this is what they proposed. This is the revision. So this is
Okay.
all staying the same.
Okay.
The only thing that's changing on that revision is this line.
But this is the overlay of the
Correct.
existing, and then this is, okay,
So it's gonna be this proposal
I got it,
with that.
with that rounded off.
Squiggly line.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Happy?
Yes.
Staff is happy.
Utilities all approved and there's a letter of approval from Hanson.
Eating all the bandwidth in City Hall.
Oh, it's going so slow.
It's been real slow.
We definitely, I mean, the internet is going so
No.
slow and that's why it's taking forever.
Three of us dial into it right now, all pulling the same thing. Anybody have anything to add or make a motion?
I'll motion if no one has anything to add. I'll recommend approval of the council for FPLT 21-0753, final plat of Pamulia Beach PUD Unit 4A, including the most recently submitted adjustment to, I believe, which was lot 10, is that correct?
1D, 10D. I'm sorry, 1D, lot 1D,
Sure.
boundary between a proposed lot 1D and where the remaining golf course is. Right,
Okay.
it's lot 1D.
Looks like a 10 to me, that's my eyesight. Are you sure? Looks like a 10 to me.
Block 10.
1D.
Sorry, old age.
Okay.
1D.
1D.
But 1D can.
I'll second the one.
Ooh, that was tough.
Okay, we've got a motion from Nick and a second from Craig. So let's start with Garrett Kipke,
Yes.
Ashley Robertson,
Yes.
Kyle Burgess,
Yes.
Mike Dayon,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
Nick Lorette,
Yes.
Chad Schmides.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Call your husband's trying to call me.
I apologize.
No, I'm just making sure nothing's wrong. Like he wasn't trying to find me to find you.
He probably does not realize that you're in the same meeting that I am.
Okay.
Or he's checking to see if you'll.
Item 4.4, discuss and take action to confirm no Dune Permit BFDP 21-0818 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan. The proposed permit will allow mobility mats to be placed on an existing footpath through the dunes with no impact to critical dunes. Applicant Tammy Berkeley, Sea Isle Village property, location 1129 11th Street.
Thank you. So I know it will come as a great surprise to most of you, but I screwed up when Tammy, representing CL, came to us and said, we just want to lay a mat over a existing 35-year-old footpath to keep it from eroding any further and to kind of keep people on the footpath. And since there were no critical dunes, I said, roll the mat out. GLO didn't feel the same as I did and let me know as such. And so we went back to Tammy and said, since they are also going to be extracting a lease for use of the property between mean high tide and your property, we pretty much are going to have to do whatever they say we do, regardless of what I told you. So with apologies, we launched into the no dune permitting process, and with several Zoom calls and lots of back and forth, GLO agreed that there were no impacts to the dunes, contrary to all of the damage that they tried to convince us was done by literally rolling out a mat on top of an existing path. But rather than die on that hill, which would have jeopardized the lease that CL needs, we worked with GLO and got the no dune permit, which is what you have before you now. I don't know if you've been to the beach or seen this Moby mat, as they call it, became somewhat popular in South Padre Island a few years ago. Much to my surprise, GLO doesn't particularly like Moby mats.
But they also pay for them.
But yet, yeah, but through various grants, they buy them for South Padre. The pervious, easily removable mats. Nonetheless, they did agree that no dune permit would be the appropriate course of action, although we couldn't identify that it was technically construction that was happening when you roll a mat out. Nonetheless, I probably made my point. So with that, you have the no dune permit. The mat's there. They didn't make them remove the mat. But like I said, there was a lot of manpower to provide photos and everything else as to the fact that nothing was impacted, no damage to dunes or vegetation, which is kind of where we're at now. So after the fact, we're coming back in. We asked her to put together the no dune permit. It was a pretty simple process, and Nicole helped her considerably, and that's what you have before you. So staff recommends approval.
So GL school,
Well, we have to send it to them.
but
So
they, per their track record in South Padre, theoretically.
As of now, they're
theoretically,
they're
I don't think
Are
that
the
they,
ones down in South Padre blue instead of sand colored?
no, they're blue.
No, they're blue and sand
And
color down
purple. I
there.
think they had a purple one.
Yeah.
More organic would be nice, but that's probably.
Yeah.
Do you know why GLO doesn't like them?
They don't like anything.
they don't really
Okay.
like anything.
Got it, okay.
And if you're listening, that I mean that with all due respect,
But nothing in the dunes.
Okay.
They would prefer it just
Right.
not be anything.
right? However,
This is
this is an instance where continued walking, because like I said, this is not a boardwalk or anything else. It's a footpath. Continued walking would, in our opinion, simply expand that footpath. It would migrate. This at least keeps the pedestrians on a path and keeps it from eroding anymore. And in the face of a storm, you roll up your expensive mat and you store it.
And they did notice that as people were using that, they were making the path wider and wider and wider, and they wanted to not have that happen.
I had to Google what a Moby mat was. I haven't seen them in South Padre.
And you've not seen one here.
This might be a silly question. How does it stay?
They have it
Just-
staked down in there.
Okay. But there's no handrail going to
No,
be.
it's literally like an exercise mat on
Yeah.
steroids. It's
Yeah,
just-
that's what I saw. I saw some with handrails. I was just curious.
It's gonna be as much maintenance for them with or without it. I mean, there was a picture last time or whenever we saw it, and half of it was covered up with sand. They're still gonna have to get the sand off.
Right, but
It
at least you
really is just another layer of sand. It's just not sand.
Practically,
Sand
seems like
covered.
it would keep from running it out, and everything would actually be less with something on top. It's like put plywood on top of sand. It's gonna be
Right.
better than just walking through the sand.
There's no harm.
And the main idea was that they had some of their owners and visitors that were mobility impaired and scooters and other things that obviously couldn't navigate through the just sand alone. It's not a catch-all for everything, nor is it an ADA compliant nor intended to be, but it does help some.
I think it was meant for wagons and that such, not
Yeah,
really
there's still some
wheelchairs.
steepness that a lot of the wooden boardwalks have that impede certain mobility, but it's a step in a better direction than what they had prior to, so it will help some.
Do we have an ADA compliant boardwalk in this town?
Boardwalks, yeah,
There's some of them that are ADA compliant?
I would imagine the newer ones probably have to be.
they're required to be.
The main thing are the
It's
slopes.
definitely not.
Yeah. The
Oh,
main,
yeah, I know where you live.
yeah, the main thing are the slopes that they have to be up and over the dunes. You know, you typically can't meet ADA's, 1 in 12 minimum or maximum slope, so. But since most of them are golf cart accessible now too, it's a moot point. Anyway, sorry to beat that dead horse. So anyway, we recommend approval.
I'm going to be quiet, somebody else do this.
I'll make a motion to approve the no dune permit BFDP 21-0818. Is consistent with the city's coastal management plan.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion from Garrett and a second from Ashley. I'm gonna start with you, Mike. Mike Dayon,
Yes.
Garrett Kipke,
Yes.
Ashley Robertson,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
Mike Lorette,
Yes.
Paul Burgess,
Yes.
and Chad Schmider.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Started with Mike before.
Item 4.5, discuss and take action to confirm that no dune permit BFDP 21-0793 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan. The proposed permit will allow the relocation of an existing fence and extension of an existing parking area with no impacts to critical dunes. Applicant Don Kostenbader, Galt Construction for Sandcastle Condominiums, property location 800 Sandcastle Drive.
And Nicole, I assume, is going to try to bring up that aerial, but again, this is another, as the name implies, a permit where they're asking for a determination that there are no critical dunes being impacted by the proposed work. And I walked the site and I can tell you that is the case. So there's an existing fence right now that they feel compelled to move. Actually, I think it's only 5 or 6 feet. But nonetheless, they want to move it into an area that's been pre-maintained and pre-flattened. And so that's part of the proposal, is that fence be moved seaward in that already flattened area, just to capture a little bit more of that yard within the fence. And then the parking lot also just is in an area that I think where the dune protection line kind of bifurcates that area and
I don't know why I can't get out of this strange view.
3D view. Actually, it's kind of cool. Anyway, so the same thing, a portion of the expansion of that parking lot
So
is
this,
still,
the dune protection line comes about right here through this building that doesn't exist there anymore. So it catches just this little portion right here of the parking lot expansion that they're going to do. They're expanding the parking lot back in this area.
So the fence that runs parallel to Sandcastle Drive right there, there's the sidewalk and then there's some vegetation and then there's the fence. They're talking about moving that entire fence towards the
no,
This
sidewalk.
fence
the
down
fence
here
is the seaward
in
side.
front.
Just this east side fence.
So
Correct.
it's this whole seaward side just down to where these dunes start
Okay,
to
understood.
capture that flat area.
I recommended approval across the street, either the last meeting or the meeting.
Right.
before.
With the retaining wall across.
And then,
Right.
and then the showers right next to that.
Right, the city shower.
Right. So they submitted the dune permit just for the fence to begin with, but then they submitted plans for that parking lot, and it catches literally probably like 6 feet of their parking lot expansion. So I just had them redo it and add that parking lot portion into it. So it's just a very small portion of that parking lot that they're adding that's going to be in the dune protection line, but it's a flat area anyway.
Yeah, regardless, there was no dunes being impacted or vegetation being impacted, so it was much easier just to incorporate into the application.
Sure.
So with that said, staff recommends approval.
And where does, I mean, just out of curiosity, where, I guess does their property line go all the way to the GLO line or is it?
It captures almost all of their property.
Yeah, I don't know where their property line is, but yeah, the only thing between, I don't think there's any private property between them and
The beach.
the
Oh,
beach.
no,
Oh,
not
no.
the beach, no.
Yeah.
No. I thought you were talking about the app side.
No, I was just talking on
Yeah,
the
no,
east
yeah,
side of the
no.
beach.
This GLO property.
Some areas, there's
Yeah.
private property between what is beachfront
Right.
and
Right.
the actual beach. And
Not
then
here.
in some areas, it's,
Yeah.
you own everything to the GLO line, you just can't build in there because
Yeah.
you because of the importance of these. So moving the fence is not, I mean, it's not getting anywhere close to the property line.
No.
They're well within it. Okay. So Nicole, what you're talking about, the other little place where they just added the little, you said it's like 6 feet, is that site 2 on page 73 here? Up against La Playa Drive?
It's gonna take me a long time to get to that page.
Come on. Yeah.
Sorry, our internet is
Oh, I
just,
know. It's this little spot right here. Okay.
yeah, they're expanding the parking lot into that whole into that whole grass area there, but that, everything else is outside of the dune protection.
Right.
So the grass area that the paving is going over is within the dune protection line?
So it
Just
starts
that-
there at that last parking
Right.
spot right there,
Right.
and
Right
that
there.
dune protection line probably ends about where that dumpster is right there. So they're extending the parking lot through that grass area all the way back here, but nothing back here is in the dune.
Yeah, that's
protection line.
outside of it.
Just this little portion right here, which is why we included it.
And nobody's going to take issue with that being paved as far as oversight by?
Well, they haven't yet. I mean, there's nothing that prevents them from paving it.
Maybe.
Right.
Because of the nature, it is not a critical dune.
Correct.
And they're obviously a established condominium that can use all the parking they can get.
Yeah, the place is looking nice.
Yeah.
Really is.
Both of them combined with, what's Seaside? Is that the one on the north side? Other than that, thank you, city, for shortening their, whatever they were doing over there with that,
The lighthouse.
their lighthouse.
That got shut down.
Yeah, we had, I think
Lowered it.
we ensured that they saw the light.
No pun intended, I'm sure.
No, it's intended.
Anybody have a motion on no dune permit BFDP 21-0793?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to confirm that no dune permit BFDP 21-0793 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Craig and a second from Kyle. Start with Nick Lorette.
Yes.
Ashley Robertson,
Yes.
Garrett Kipke,
Yes.
Mike Dayon,
Yes.
Craig Scott,
Yes.
and Chad Schmides.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item 4.6, general discussion regarding follow-up on mitigation and inclusion of a dune permit. Thank you for adding this.
No, sure, absolutely. So this is a topic that we'd started in, and I guess it was COVID that kind of derailed this conversation.
This is Frank's,
This is Frank's
this
baby.
is
Yeah.
Frank's baby.
I've never had a conversation.
No, I know, but he's glad you brought it back up.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
It's
the,
working the boat.
yeah, so the issue, Chad, I think, is the fact that, we do these dune permits and not so much a no dune permit because clearly there's no critical dunes being impacted, hence no compensation mitigation. But on those where there is, as you'll remember, there's typically details on how much volume is being impacted, how much vegetation in this, usually measured in square footage, where the compensation is going, placement, and there's a lot of detailed information in the full dune permits. And the way the ordinance is written and the way the GLO's Natural Resource Act is that there's 3 years to complete the mitigation. There's some other provisions that says that it is expected to start with the beginning of any construction when it's approved. But then once it commences, then they've got 3 years to do it. Follow-up is, I think, ultimately the issue is that a lot of the dune permits are pretty detailed and, I mean, down to the cubic yard of volume.
Foot.
Yeah,
I've got a
correct.
foot one, right?
Yeah, so pretty scientific. And admittedly, staff nor any of us has the expertise to precisely verify. I mean, to the degree that it's being prepared, that what we got, what is approved is what actually is done. And so it started the discussion, and we talked to several engineers, and of course the question became, okay, well, do we hold the applicant responsible for proving to us that it was done mostly correctly? Because as we started to hear from some of our engineers that we visited with, that the precision is a little bit difficult to measure. At least that's what we were being told, even though they can, on the application, put down to the cubic foot how much is being impacted and needs to be compensated for. But when it came to the follow-up, it again, they just wanted to make sure we understood that. I don't think anybody wanted to put their neck out that they would guarantee it down to that foot, inch, whatever. So part of the discussion went that way.
Without some pretty expensive.
Without some pretty expensive.
Topography.
Correct, which would add obviously the cost to somebody if that was the level
Thousands
of.
of dollars could be added if you
Possibly.
do it before and after topography.
So I don't know if that lays out that kind of the idea as to what, how we arrive at that. Now, some of the stuff's easy. I mean, if it's, like I said, we can go out there and we can possibly, go out and kind of look and, look at a drawing. I mean, I like to say we're reasonably intelligent people. But that kind of prompts the discussion. So, and again, part of the other issue, as I said, is that they've got 3 years to do it. And so the big developments, it becomes more complicated because they're talking about, like Cinnamon Shore South, they did hundreds of lots, dozens of acres in different tracks at one time in their Dune Permit, and significant volumes. And like I said, we actually drove out there in a couple of instances and we tried to verify as best we could. We looked and looks right.
Well, no, we found some issues.
Well, we did. Yeah, we found some issues where it didn't look right. And it was obvious that it didn't look right and corrections came as a result of that. Anyway, so that, Chad, I don't know if you have some other thoughts, but that lays out kind of the earlier discussion that we started, but never came to a resolution.
Sure. And I mean, I've thought about things like you said, a topography before and after, but it really, even with the topography and calculating those volumes, even the best of mathematicians would have a hard time with the shapes and everything else getting a true volume out of something like that.
Even though they're required to on their permitting process.
Well, on the front end of the permitting process, but they draw an emergent mound that's a perfect circle.
No, I understand.
I can do the math on that one.
Provoking thought.
Yeah.
I mean, we always have a photo submittal in the application that shows, okay, this is the area before, and this is before we're going to come in, and afterwards we're going to mitigate into this section. And we're going to, let's just make it a round number. We're going to add 100 yards. So we're going to come in here and we're going to drop 12 dump trucks of sand right here. We're going to move 12 there. But then at some point, I mean, every time I've had to deal with the Dune Permit, and this is not to make it personal, I go back and I have somebody come in and seed it with native grasses, because that's, I mean, first, you don't want stuff blowing away, and second, that's what you should do. Could it be even as simple as something as following back up toward the end of a Dune Permit I mean, you guys will go look at it sometimes too, but look, we need to see pictures of what you actually did so we can put it in the file. So if somebody comes back to us in 4 or 5 years to say, you guys approved this, did it ever actually happen? At least you can say, hey, look, we've got photo evidence, it's in the file now, it happened. Or if they bring back photos that look just the same as it did before, well then, hey, it's time to go out there and take a look at it. And we don't want to burden staff with any more than they've already got, but it's just something to where, I mean, all the stuff that we look through, all these things all the time and we approve, but I sure would it make me feel better to know at the end of the day that if I was supposed to mitigate 600 yards, that's something reasonable within that expectation actually did get mitigated. And anybody chime in if they've got.
No, I mean, I think you're right.
I think it ought to be just an extension of, obviously we know that an individual can't go build a house without a windstorm engineer or structural engineer, and you can't play Dune Permit or no Dune Permit without a civil engineer. It can't lay on the responsibility of the owner. Economically it can, because it economically is responsible for them to do that up front with their engineers. So it has to be tied to the the existing engineer of that project. I totally agree that we all, if we've been here long enough, the dunes change all the time. I mean, we've seen beach walkovers that were 10 feet tall, and 8 years later, they were only 2 foot above the sand. So, but I think for accountability and checks and balance wise, the engineer of record should be responsible for some form of accountability. I really think you're referring to the 100 yards, 1,000 yards, that accountability should be up front. It's too easy. I mean, there's got to be flexibility because it's a moving target. If Island Construction's doing it, they can put those tickets together and there's your accountability on, we put that much sand there. We know that sand could be an acre or 2 down the road. So we can't go 3 years down the road and try to go to the expense, the engineer for the owner, for the city to account for the sand. They can account for it when you do it. Relatively easy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And then I think, which means it can't be a burden on the engineer of record, but it's a responsibility. And that would be more, let's check off. It's too easy to account for the fill, I think, at time of doing what you're doing. And really the follow-up is not where that sand moved. Everything's moving out there. It's the vegetation. And that does not put too much of a burden on the engineer of record. You can't put it on the homeowner. You got to have a licensed somebody to do it, just like we do on the front end for everything. So it's more of a visual, and if the vegetation's not working, they're not trying, it's not done, it should be about the vegetation at that 3rd year. Because no one's going to account for that sand, because thousands of yards move all over that dune all the time. So that's, once again, we can't put too much burden on the engineer. He's going to go, I'm not doing it.
Right.
It's hard
I
enough to
won't
get an
do
engineer to
Dune
do a Dune
Permits,
permit
you know.
anymore.
You
It's
know.
hard to get any of them to do it.
Right. But if it's strictly a visual on vegetation, or they call the environmental engineer, every one of them's got somebody they call to go out and check the vegetation. There's got to be some kind of accountability. It can't be these guys and the rest of their staff.
Could it be even, you have something to say.
No, I was just going to speak to your point that the dunes are forever changing.
By design, we love it.
I mean, by design, and that's what happens. And so, like, I think, we got to be extremely careful when assigning accountability for something like that, because I in my experience, I've never had one of my owners that we've, gone through the dune permitting process, and then 3 or 4 years later, they call and they say, hey, so-and-so's out here looking at the mitigation that we did 3 or 4 years ago. It's changed.
Moving target.
What are we going to do?
Right.
That to me, that I've never had that experience before. But like you said, like maybe gathering the receipts for fill or some.
You have to eliminate that part of it up front.
Right.
There's
Right.
no accountability.
Right. Exactly. And so if you can just prove that initially the mitigation was done to plan and all that good stuff, and that the process of getting the native grasses and everything were put into place, then I think, nature kind of takes its course after
And
that.
then it's a flyby for the engineer or the environmental biologist that they hire to go out and confirm the vegetation is back. It's not some crazy $10,000 expense to the owner or a
Right.
big expense.
I was thinking $150 expense for somebody to take a picture and say, hey,
We're cool.
it's vegetated, and there's more there than when we put the dune permit in 2 years ago.
And we eliminate the debate over, well, where's all that sand? Nobody knows where it's at.
It's gone. It's in the bay.
So right
Well, but we
now,
could do that up front.
as it stands, and I'm playing catch up, I'm new. When a dune permit, when they reach that 3-year time limit, what is the verification process? You physically go out, and who monitors those 3-year expirations?
So, we keep records of those, and at the end of every dune permit,
Mhm.
you have the dune permit that's signed, and it's got the expiration date.
Mhm.
So we've got all the dune permits and when they expire.
So you keep a log of those and by
A
time
report.
frame, and then you
And then you physically go out there.
Well, no, that's kind of the weak link in it. So we've got several scenarios. So that like the easy one is the single family residence, imminent construction, where you guys have a contract, you're going to build it. They need a dune permit. You go out there, you get the dune permit. There's the mitigation, and that's actually kind of an easy one, because just like we have a drainage compliance step that we've implemented, we could do a mitigation step. So before we issue the C of O, so we can, to me, that one, we can kind of check off, that's the easy one. So then the next one
And
is.
that's the majority of our dune permits.
Right. So that we could probably do, and same thing, whatever the documentation you guys would feel comfortable with, let's say it's a photo. So check that one off with that. The ones that become more difficult are the ones where they get a dune permit to entitle the property, to make them more marketable for whatever the various reasons.
Like the
And we have quite a few.
Like 4 different walkovers that aren't being built yet,
Right.
but the dune permits are in place there.
Or like in the case where we did the mitigation over there on Ocean View, and the dune permit actually transferred with the sale of the lot.
Right.
And so there was a dune permit that was in place that didn't necessarily match up with, like, say, the site plan that we got for the job that we were going to do. So you have to be careful that you do the mitigation to the plan that came with the lot.
And
Selling feature.
Right.
You know.
So they have up to 3 years to do it. And therein kind of is where it falls through the cracks, or we get hit by a bus, we leave. It's how do we track that so the next person following in Nicole's footsteps, mine, whomever, picks up where we left off, because they don't have to do it for 3 years. So, and then of course, then you've got I guess what I'll call the other third, and we won't see these probably as fast and furious as we had, but the big developments. In fact, there may not be a whole lot more anytime in the near future. But if there's another big tract, and again, it's multiple lots, like a Palmilla, Sunflower, something like that, those are all done at once, a subdivision, so
We'll do those center 2 tracks of.
yeah, so there may be some, but that's the other one. So they got, 3 years to do it. It may be a year and a half, and they don't have to come in and tell us they're going to start,
I think
So those are some of the scenarios. Like I said, some are easy. It's the other ones that are more
The
challenging.
good news is I don't think
I think they
there's,
all can be easy. Accountability of the sand put where it's supposed to be put at the moment in time when they're doing it is very easy. Y'all diarying, which you do anyway, we're getting better all the time with your technology, to where if it's a 3-year gig at 2.5 years, 2 years, send them a flyer and then go, this is the year where you have to have your engineer account for, or the environmental biologist or whatever, account that all of your vegetation is fine. And there's nothing left to do because we've already accounted for the fill. And that is different right now. Y'all don't really account for the fill right now, do you? But we should do.
we eyeball it.
But it can't be a whole nother survey. It puts too much financial burden on everybody. The world works on, with Phil, they work on tickets. It's just not that big a deal to account to a
So Nick,
relatively good.
is it always that? I mean, do they ever move when you're?
You move dirt, yeah.
Move dirt.
I do a lot of mitigation.
But you
because
add.
I dig a pool, I get a dune permit for a pool. And so we had to go back, and they own the property, but it has to encroach into the critical dune. So we get a dune permit, and they come back and they say, okay, the prescribed plan is you're now going to do 50 yards right here. So when we dig the pool, we take all that and we stack it up right there, and that
Toward the ocean.
toward the ocean, and now that's our mitigated.
So
dune.
how would
you
you
don't have it,
prove that?
But you don't
You couldn't do
don't
that
have
when
any
you truck
tickets.
Either a ticket or a photo,
Yeah.
either one, just trying.
It's just not that
to-
difficult to account within a 20% range of effectiveness, and that's, you're not going to get any better.
I think, I mean, the vegetation, I mean,
That's an easy,
but you want to see the sand there, and if you sprayed it, you can see the green spray on there.
Right.
Because I don't think it has to be that hard if somebody could just submit
It's not.
something back to the city so it's in the file and know that all the work we did here trying to approve all this stuff, that if it was for a pool or a house or anything else, that, hey, where we were supposed to build emergent mounds,
they were there.
here's the photo evidence on this date. here it is,
It's not that
and put it in the file. It doesn't put a lot of burden on you guys. It shouldn't put that much burden on the engineer or the applicant.
And maybe we just require anybody that gets a dune permit, we put the burden on them also to notify us when the mitigation starts. Because it may not start for a year.
Sure.
It's
Or
actually a requirement already.
if you're gonna close
But one
out,
that hasn't really been.
Yeah, we haven't really,
if you're gonna close out the pool permit, well, you got a dune permit to get the pool put in. When you guys, hey, you're closing out your pool permit here. Hey, tell you what,
That'll be done.
can we get a picture?
Yeah.
of-
Those are the-
of what
those
you're
are the
supposed to do
easy
about
ones.
it,
We-
And then add it to the file, and at least we all have some.
and maybe that's it, maybe on those, we just put the step in, just like we do drainage.
But even if it's just not a pool, if you're moving, if Cinnamon Shores is moving 5,000 yards of dune toward the ocean, it's still not that difficult for a photograph to, we're not gonna be measuring
right.
it by a cup.
No.
It's just too easy to, it shows due diligence and it
There you go.
distributes the effort and the exposure and the liability equally from staff, city, builder, developer, consumer, and civil engineer, and that's what you want. And we just don't quite have it right now, but we're about this far from it. It's not that big a deal, I think.
I think it should be pretty painless. It would make, that's why I brought it up, because I think it'd make me feel a lot better to know that it happened in the end. I mean, I've got 266 feet I have to do on a job, and I mean, before I closed that permit, because I had to do a dune permit, they got me 266 cubic feet to do the job in the first place. Hey, maybe before you give me my CO, say, hey, look, can you send me a picture of your 266 feet where it is supposed to be? And here's your picture, put it in the file.
The
And
problem is that doesn't really close up the dune permit because you have to wait until it's vegetated completely, and that could
It's
take
still the
another
right
year.
time, it's still the
year and a
right
half.
time to account for the fill,
You can verify
whether it's
that.
moving fill or adding fill, it's the right time.
But you talk about, I assume hydromulching is that what,
I mean, sand, I mean, it's just, that's
So
what.
hydromulching,
Oh,
You're
you're
not
talking
gonna-
about the
for the
hydraulic stuff.
vegetation part?
I will tell you, the only downside about the hydraulic stuff is they're limited on how far they can get that tube out there.
Gotcha.
They got about 100 feet. And so you get beyond about 100 feet from that trailer, then they have to hand spread it. And it doesn't have that bright green look to it that the hydromulching does to.
But-
I'm
but
sorry, what is hydromulching?
It's just it's a spray. It's a spray that contains a bunch of
Liquid
in this
seeds.
case, like
Super
liquid
seeds.
native
Super
seeds
seeds.
and
Okay,
things
got
like
it.
that.
They'll
They spray.
usually mix rye because it grows really quick and it
Mhm.
stabilizes the sand with a bunch of native grasses. And in the end, unfortunately, you end up with a lot of sunflowers too, because I'm not a big
Native.
sunflower fan.
they're native,
But they're native, but sunflowers, anytime you turn sand over here, you get a lot of sunflowers back. It's
Very
just part of,
decent.
part of the process.
it's just accountability, but at the appropriate time, so there's no guessing. So I think we're all in agreement that that's kind of the broad brush way of doing it, and then how do we just kind of put that together? I think the end result is the easiest, as long as that urban engineering, Hanson, or their environmental person's going out there. What they cannot do, and it's inappropriate to request, is to be able to do a whole dune survey again, because they're supposed to move. That's part of Mother Nature.
You're right. Once they set it, it's going to be different the next day.
So we do that at the construction site.
But maybe if we did, again, if they either, I mean, even spreading hay on top of that dune stabilizes it, and it will give the weeds the vine, the goat weed, and well,
The native
I think goat
vegetation.
weed, a chance, but that could close it out so that we,
And it's a visual with pictures.
so we could
I
do
would,
it
I
at the
would
same
suggest that
time.
we take what we're talking about right now and talk to Hanson, talk to Urban, any other engineer, just to get their provocation over what we're suggesting. But I know we're trying to make it as seamless and as less challenging and economical
Economical.
on everybody.
Yeah.
And I guess you have to, I was thinking maybe we could tie it to the building permit associated with it, but that's you're.
There's not always a building
missing the
permit.
point.
It's a slippery slope.
It's
Yeah.
a slippery slope when you're applying rules. It's like the IRS, it's not really good.
Right.
You're applying rules on top of rules, so.
They might not, the timing might not be right.
Yeah, because you have to have a dune permit before you can get the building permit.
Sure.
But again, is there an opportunity to close out the,
I've
Building
got
permit.
one to where we might be building houses, but not a beach walk over for a year. And so that would be the slippery slope to where that doesn't work.
I agree with that.
You know?
So is it Does anybody else have anything? Because I think I hear what you're saying. Maybe we table this and say, we're going to take maybe let's reach out to Craig and let's reach out to Urban and say, hey, look, what's the most painless way to know as a city that everything we did good on the front end, that there's something simple and not a full topography or anything, but there's something simple in the file that shows that
And I think the Dune
the dune was mitigated as designed.
Yeah.
And then the next hurricane's going to come through and knock it over anyway, but at least the part that we approved.
Well, with your permission, can I invite them to come?
Sure.
Like, there was no action on this agenda anyway, so we don't have to do anything, just a discussion item, but I'll invite them and see if they can come in and,
Fantastic.
because I know they have some opinions, you know, and again, part of it, you know, Nick has addressed pretty well. I mean, is the fact that, and I get their point. They're not going to come back in and certify that whatever they did.
They're going to quit. They're going to quit engineering Dune permits if we.
Right.
Yeah, and we can't.
It's
We
tough
can't-
right now. Urban doesn't want to do them.
Right. I mean, we
No,
have to
that's
be
my whole point.
really
That's my whole
careful. Like, we don't want to get, you know,
We can't not have engineers to do. what we want.
no, and we can't add too much to the process or too much cost or anything like that for anybody. Otherwise, we're all going to be
Yeah.
shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
I fully agree with you.
Yeah.
So that's why I was just, hey, take a picture and put it in the file and call it a day. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's all I'm really asking for.
Yeah.
The flip side is if things are going like, continue to go like they're going,
We're not going to have much.
we're not going to have many Dune permits left to deal with.
But I do think that the accountability thing for the liability and all that is really, really worthwhile.
And that's just,
Yeah.
that's spiraling out of the litigious life we live in is spiraling out of control.
Right.
Whether it's Urban or another engineering firm, their underwriter's going to finally go, no more.
Yeah.
You know what, man?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it should be painless and almost costless and not put somebody in a, put the engineer in a litigious situation, just something to say, look, you know, we told them to put a mound here, there's a mound here now.
Well, and it's the biologist that goes out for the engineering company, it's like third-party inspections in the residential business. Before you even get to the inspection, there's 30 pages of, I'm not liable for any
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah. I'm going to certify this.
It's
but I
more
didn't
of,
do
this is
anything.
my opinion based on,
Right.
but it's still better than what we have now.
Mhm.
Now, has GLO popped us as a city for have we done anything wrong by not following up in y'all's lifetime
They
here?
have never said it.
So it's just a good reference point to know.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was asking about was what's,
Is there a fire?
what has
in the
come
field?
back,
I
you
don't
know,
think
where's the
there
fire that
is.
we're trying to extinguish, you know?
Right.
It just, I mean, to Chad's, he probably just feels a little weird because he did this work and he's like, well, who's checking it?
Admittedly, I've always done what I said, what I was supposed to
And
do,
like,
but I just
I
want,
think the good news is
I know
most
not every-
people that do Dune permits are doing what they said they were going to do.
And
I
that's what
don't
you'd like to
think we
think.
have any issue.
and yeah, I'd love to think that, but I know a lot of people don't do business the same way we do business, to where it's like, I want to make sure I'm not going to get in trouble for something later, so I go out of my way to try to overdo things.
And
It's not everybody's like that,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and we have a lot of new builders in town because of all the growth and things like that.
the GLO does have field
Oh, and they
people on the ground, just like this Moby Mat deal. you
and
know?
they send us things all the time, little issues that come up here and there. None of them have been Dune permit follow up.
Do we have any idea what other markets do?
No, that's what I told Nicole. I said, I'm going to call South Padre Galveston. I'll try to get an idea of what they're doing.
So I don't,
Sure,
I don't think
So
we're
that we may not have to reinvent the wheel. See,
We're not going to solve all this tonight, it's just something that,
It's a good start,
like,
but you're totally correct. We get too tough, we're not going to have anybody to do what the regs require us to do, and then we're totally hogtied on it.
right. And the people that are doing those for us are doing a good job
Right.
doing them.
Mhm.
With
We don't
no
wanna lose
complaints,
that.
so
and again, we
just
know
a
that
little accountability.
we know the GLO is going behind these Dune permits that are being issued, and they're seeing if they're generally in conformance, or we'd hear. You know, we hear when somebody puts railroad ties that washed away after the coastal flood events and put them back and got them maybe got a little overzealous in putting a couple of new ones in front of the old ones.
Never happened.
there's a house on Avenue B that's being held up by a railroad tie wall right now.
So we know they're out there and around. So the good news is with whoever asked the question, no, they're not beating us up for gross
That's a good sign.
negligence
Very good
of
sign.
that stuff. And we try to be proactive. I mean, if we see something, you know, we try to head them off and just, you know, we'll call whoever the the egregious party is, and, ask them to rectify it, and then we'll let GLO know we've identified, we've made contact, and they're reconciling, and we're going to slap their hand and explain to them how serious it is, and then we move on.
And when Frank brought it up originally, I don't know if we pulled old Dune permits that had already been past their 3-year mark, and we went out and looked, and I mean, there were several that I think we could tell the mitigation that they did.
Mother
They did
Nation-
it well.
That's it. Yeah.
Mother Nature's pretty good on its own, even if they didn't do
The
anything.
stuff will grow back in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
You guys have looked at stuff with me before, and you look at it and you're like, well, you were all well and good until that stuff started growing there. And I was like, okay, well, here we go.
Yeah. And we do that because that's what GLO does. They said, well, sorry, they pushed that sand over there, and now it's got green on it. It's a dune.
You can sometimes create your own critical dome and not realize what you're
Yeah,
doing.
so,
Just like you can-
yeah, lesson learned. If you've got something maintained, keep it maintained. Yeah, like Sandcastle, had they not maintained that area behind there and kept it mowed and flattened, they'd have been looking at a whole dune permit to move the fence, or they probably wouldn't be doing it. Anyway, we'll invite then if I understand, then we'll go ahead and see if we can invite a couple of the engineers to show up and,
I think these
Just
guys
comment.
are both making a really good point. When you present it to them, you may want to make sure that we're trying to find the simplest way possible.
Gotta be.
oh no, that's what,
Yeah.
that'll be my invite is that, look, we just need, see how you guys, what you think would be the right solution.
And we started to have that conversation
Yeah.
with both of them back then, and Jim was like, we don't want to do anything that
I mean,
difficult.
we could eliminate the engineer other than his objective liability from design, but we've already, I think everybody here knows that those dunes are moving right now. It's subjective after 3 years, right? So, I mean, we could.
After 3 days, it's,
Yes, I mean, if you could account for moving the fill and the fill that you paid for and moved to the appropriate place, and then you just had a environmental biologist go out and confirm in 3 years that the vegetation is right, we've kind of eliminated the scare to the engineers other than their inherent liabilities, because we all have liability based on what we do, whether it's y'all making calls and us making
but
calls.
Nick, maybe it's a simple, maybe you just need somebody to go out there and say, yeah, stuff's growing on the dunes.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, and I mean, not even an
$300
environmental
bill
biologist,
to a environmental engineer. He just walks in and says, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, you're definitely with you're asking for more than I was even
Yeah.
thinking. I just want to see that if it's supposed to be 100 yards here, that, hey, it's 100 yards.
The only way to do that is when you do it. I think it'll never be the same afterwards.
No.
But the vegetation takes care of itself. in my
Chad, who are
opinion.
you asking to go out and do that?
I don't, I mean, there's no,
You're just
I
going
do
out,
it,
feeling
and
good
No,
about
I
it.
know, but so say the picture.
The follow-up part.
The follow-up part. Who in your view would do that? The contractor, the property owner, the
Anybody, any of them?
staff?
I mean, if we're going to require whoever applied for the dune permit on behalf of, which I'm fine with it, let's just say it was the engineer goes out and they do the dune permit, and then I don't really care how they get the evidence, but I would think it's probably more accountable if they sent one of their field guys out. I mean, they got field guys out every day. Hey, go by, take a look at this, take a picture so we can put it in the file and just file it away. Like here's a post dune permit picture of what has happened. And then that way we just have something in the file. So if something ever came back up later on, we could go back and look at something that says, hey, 6 months after, or 3 months after the project was done, this is what it looked like and it happened. But I don't even know if it necessarily needs to be an environmental engineer who's going to go out there and say, okay, well, there's this seagrass here, or this grass here, and this here, or, oh, I see a sunflower. But hey, there's vegetation on it, and there's a mound there that wasn't there in the pictures that we started, before we started.
Right.
And then that kind of closes out. That's part of the closing package of the whole dune or no dune permit. Well, no, it doesn't matter, but of the whole dune permit.
And an island construction or anybody else that does this, they have tickets because they're responsible. Each individual employee is responsible for what they do. They have tickets if they're moving an existing dune. They are basically logging that anyway. And then
Because they're charging for it.
when they're importing, they're logging every bit of that. And if it's even that,
Sure. Or if it's,
and that's how they charge. So,
Right.
and then 3 years from now, if Mother Nature's going to take care of it anyway, it's going to be grown up and we're done.
I mean, if it was pushed so far as they needed some sort of volumetric evidence, and in case of a pool or something like that, it'd be like, okay, this pool is 10 by 20 and it's 4 feet deep. Here's
Show
the
the
math
count.
on it.
Yeah.
We excavated it. We didn't take any trucks out of here. That's what we excavated. That's what we dumped right there.
Not
We
that
got the
big.
volume plus 5%.
It's a passive but accountable way of doing it.
We're trusting, but we're verifying.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
That's 100% it. Just, hey, we trust that you did it, but just have something that we can put in the long-term file. If it ever comes back, or GLO comes in and raids our offices, we have something that shows that
We made an effort.
Yes. That we just
And
didn't
that's a
want.
great report that forever long y'all have been here, y'all haven't had your hand slapped on anything.
Except Moby Mats.
Yeah.
I think if there'd have been sand colors, there wouldn't have been a problem. I mean that.
I think
It's
that
just
if
The
it
least
had,
invasive thing I could have possibly imagined.
if
You know,
it hadn't been blown up on Facebook and sent to the GLO 400 times in a day, it
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have been a big.
Haters gonna hate.
Those
Yeah.
Moby mats aren't even fun to walk on barefoot.
It was not comfortable, so we
No,
walked it
painful.
several times.
Oh
and
man,
it's
they're
just-
so painful. All those in South Padre, every time I walk across them, I'm like, man, why did they use these?
You've just been on this island too long. You need to wear flip-flops at least.
You know, it's strictly
Half true,
an
yes.
observation, but they're still going to have the exact same maintenance, exact same amount of sand moving maintenance with or without that thing. It's going to cost them the same amount to
Well, I
maintain.
think it's almost even more maintenance
Oh,
now
it's
because
gotta
they
be.
weren't moving sand before.
It's
Now
got-
they have to.
No,
move
it's
sand
just,
off.
as we were talking about, sand moves, we could have a 30 knot wind for 2 days and that thing can be totally covered up. You know, but I don't have an opinion.
But as long as it's not, you can pull your wagon or cooler
Yeah.
all the way to the beach.
Well, the city was closed this summer and those wagons got down there somehow.
Yes, they did. All right.
So help me with the point of parliamentary procedure on item 4.6 as far as its general discussion. We're going to table this item.
No action. It was just a discussion, just what we did. So
Okay,
So
we don't-
we'll
we don't
have
have to
another
put
discussion
Staff
next
is
time.
ready to invite some engineers.
and then we'll have an item 4.7.
we'll see if they're interested. If not, we'll.
I guess
I also liked your idea about reaching out to some
Yeah,
other.
we'll get their comments. We'll call, yeah, there's a couple of places we'll see in
You know who may be a good person to get in on this is, what's his name?
Yeah. doesn't help us.
No, I know. Let me.
Age thing and apparently.
He prepared Dune permits for a while. Mike Delaney.
Mark?
Mark Delaney?
Mark Delaney. Mark Delaney.
So he's done one
He's-
Dune permit since I've been here. He did the rest of them for the Nueces County.
Yeah, I was going to say he did a lot of them for Nueces County down there at La Concha
Yeah.
back in the day. And he may be a good person just to bounce stuff off of. So if y'all want,
He's easy to get a hold of.
man, he's so nice too.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd want to
Okay.
put in his 2 cents.
Rick, he's dealing with some stuff right now, but I think Mark would be one guy I'd really like to help. He's dealing with a little bit of stuff right now, so we might want to give him a week or two. But
Okay.
one of us can.
Yeah, I got you.
You can reach out to him or somebody else can.
So we don't scare the engineers? Do you think we're to the point where we should invite them to the next discussion? Or do we need to think this through and break down the different scenarios and have a working action
I'd at
plan?
least have staff get feedback from them based on what we
Yeah,
said. I
That's
mean, we don't
before
need
they're
to-
here though, maybe talk to the
Right.
other market and
Right. And I'll just tell them, I mean, we already started the discussion. So this is, like I said, we're just kind of picking up where we stopped. So we'll just,
Keep it simple.
yeah,
That's the whole key.
just see if they want to come in and add input, you know.
I fully agree. Let's keep this simple. Just
Right. It's got to be simple and
Let's do it
manageable.
to where Chad can sleep at night when he's doing a no Dune permit.
He just wants somebody to come do an
Come look at my
inspection for him. He says, somebody come inspect
You need a
it.
medal for doing it right.
No.
I don't need the medal. This
I know,
is
no,
not
you need
me
a
talking about my
sleeping
work
pill
side.
medal. I know what you
This is what we approve and here week after,
Yeah.
month after month, we approve these things and say, hey, we're good to go. But then thinking about it, I know
It's a
I'm not
flow.
circling around at people's job sites and like, oh, they didn't do it. I mean, I'm just not, we're not doing that. So I mean, just part of our being on
It's
this
just open.
commission, I would
Yeah.
like to make sure that at
Right.
least it's.
No, you're
clear
right.
about that.
There are relatively few Dune permits. If you've noticed, the majority of what we do are no Dune permits.
None of the engineers want to do them.
Yeah.
Well, there's just fewer and fewer properties that,
I mean, I
there's a couple that may be
do
on the horizon I can think of now.
maybe 6 or 7 Dune permits a year, true Dune permits.
It's true.
So it's not many. I mean,
boardwalks and people that are on the beachfront.
Okay,
Anybody else have anything to add?
we are still, we're
Good to
still,
physically see everybody.
yeah, we're still looking for, I know a couple of you have asked, and Nicole and us are looking for some educational programs to at least make available to you.
Everything I looked at with TML is just not really very helpful.
So we don't want to waste your time. And like I said, obviously we'll,
It was
you know,
like 4 hours of stuff. that
Yeah.
went,
and I think we're just close to them opening back up, you know, actual in-person meetings, which they've had in the area so that you haven't had to travel far. So anyway, we're working on it.
I felt this was far more productive, at least for a discussion conversation like this versus everybody trying to hang in on Zoom or, because, you know, one person's texting or looking on their other computer or something, but at least it got us all together. So item number 5, Planning and Zoning Commission comments and items for future consideration.
No, just, again, at some point in the near future, not exactly sure when, the heavy lift will be the new comprehensive plan, and
The
you guys
new,
will-
the new what?
comprehensive plan review, which will
That's
be,
gonna
which will
be,
be a major
What does that
undertaking.
entail, Rick,
A lot.
from us?
it's comprehensive.
I mean, it'll be a complete rewrite of,
But
well, a
my
complete
answer is
review.
There's not that much left here to be
Comprehend.
developed, so.
It's not much.
It'll become so it's a multi-pronged process, probably a year and a half if we're lucky, maybe longer, but a lot of it just inherently encompasses a lot of public input. My feeling is it'll speak a lot towards density. That'll become where the big discussion points go. Zoning's a tough one to change, but anyway, so it'll be a significant review of Chapter 25, which is our zoning uses, density, and 21, which is subdivisions.
It's pretty much the bulk of it.
21, 25.
Yeah.
So
Basically everything we do.
Ashley, that's probably a couple of chapters that you can, in your spare time or when you
I
find
use
yourself
the two to
Yeah.
not being able to sleep, you
read
can.
when you have nothing else to read.
Yeah, but,
I've really
but
already
what's
read
the
it.
process of doing the update? I mean, we don't just come sit
Public-
here and talk.
Public comment, public meeting, council,
Yeah, so it's,
Commission
so it's a near-term, midterm, long-term, typically. Sometimes it's just near-term, long-term plan and for the future, what the growth is, where, when, how much.
it's required, but it's a lot of minutia.
What's the timing on it when we start this too?
We're probably past we break any laws yet?
Oh, well, we're long overdue.
Typically it's every 5 years.
And we did it 7 years ago.
Yeah, so what'll probably happen, so I think we've got somebody hired that's going to be their primary focus to initiate this, working with us.
We do have an outsider driving, at least provoking thought with staff and everybody, right?
Well, I think they hired somebody.
Oh, did they?
It'll
Because
be on
last time we had
A group.
a group come in that basically structured the whole process.
So this theoretically.
And wasn't a lot of what they brought to the table pushed to the side?
Completely.
That's what I thought.
Ergo, maybe why they're doing it in-house.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, think about this. We all know this sweet little quaint town, and it's rather unique. And you get somebody from
It doesn't know.
Right.
North Texas, nothing they suggest has anything to do with what.
But
Yeah, and
keep in mind, but it'll also, the comprehensive plan will also encompass a review of the thoroughfare plan, road systems, hike and bike trails, that, all of those ideas, parks, our coastal management plan, which
Basically all.
when revised would have eliminated everything we discussed today with, again, all of these permits that we talked about, you approved and we deliberated because our coastal management plan requires it, not because the General Land Office or the Natural Resource Act requires it. There's no critical dunes being impacted.
Right.
There shouldn't be a discussion. If you're not impacting dunes, end of story.
But our coastal management.
But
plan doesn't
GLO
do it.
holds us to this discussion because we wrote it into our coastal management plan.
That's probably one of the best parts we could adjust. or try
Right,
to
so
adjust.
those kind of things will be, but like I said, thoroughfare plans, hike and bike, pedestrian, in addition to the, again, the zoning and the building regulations, that's,
So this is kind of just, would they, I guess they in their master plan, they in this master plan would relocation of, say, like a fire department or
All of
city
that.
police department or an additional, like a substation or any of that, that would all come up during that discussion or? I suppose-
I'm gonna tell you,
Maybe not.
everything
maybe,
comes
yeah,
up.
I mean, it's all
Because
gonna,
it's just everything in a blender, and it's a dynamic thing.
Right.
Nothing should not be talked about like everything you're bringing up.
Right,
short-term rental,
right.
that discussion will be reviewed and revised and,
Fan mail to follow in the jetty, I'm sure.
yeah, probably everything, but
That's
golf
right
carts,
here.
is you'll deal with everything but golf carts,
Yeah, okay.
unless you want to.
Get that in.
Anyway, I just throw that out there. Like I said,
Yeah.
chapter 25, 21 are the big ones, and like I said, you might want to review that. But it'll like I said, it'll be I can't imagine it'll be less than an 18-month process, maybe longer.
It's arduous.
And it'll start,
But you know what, but I'm not looking, you've been here longer, but is it Mike? Is that the gentleman?
Mike, oh yeah,
Mike, you guys, when you've gone through the 3 or 4 meetings you've gone through, and the reality is, if my memory is correct, we've done the same thing. Staff's done a great job. We've done our homework and everything's been unanimous. That seems, why are we here? Unfortunately, that's a 40%, 50% of our responsibility. It's a check and a balance, and it's part of the rules that we have to do. The reality is, what we're talking about is the most important thing. We get to use, we
Make
don't have
substantial
as
change.
much protocol, and it's more bringing up your ideas and suggesting, studying. That's what's fun about this, even though it can be mundane and long.
And when is
you
this
know,
going to start? Do we have a?
we don't. I think within the next 6 months, just maybe sooner.
I guess
But
probably.
like you said, I mean, you look at a lot of the candidates for council, there's a lot of discussion about Old Town. Classic, piece of the puzzle probably that'll be discussed ad nauseum is what is Old Town, overlay zones, any change, because we already have an overlay zone now. And anyway, all those things, I just throw it out there. I mean, like I said, it's coming. And again, P&Z is the heavy lifter in the process. So you kind of become the funnel,
We really
the
get to
sieve.
contribute,
And like I said, I don't want to say fun, maybe that's not the right word, but
I was looking for the perfect combination.
it'll be exciting. Anyway,
Get that in.
Interesting.
So do we get to this? Adjourned?
thank you, everybody. It's good having seeing everybody in person. Mike, next time we'll see you in person, maybe?
Absolutely.
All right.
Couldn't make this one.
That's all right. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Okay. Rick, you.
Hang on, let's get this all off of it.
Place through the night.
Oh, did you really?
Man, it was excellent.
Yeah.
The plane that crashed the other day during that.
That's what that was on.
Should be on play on that TV.
It's a service that we get that plays. You can put in kind of places.
Oh, I know.
All that's plug.
Yeah, I heard.
I was coming out on a boat to Guatemala, coming back.